Hey, yeah, you. I'm glad you showed up today. I really am, because this isn't one of those scroll past, feel good for 10 seconds, forget tomorrow moments. Nah. This is heavier than that. This is one of those moments where something inside you already knows what I'm about to say, and you've been trying real hard not to listen to it. Let me say it straight. A high-level figure has their eye on you. And no, it's not random. You've felt it, haven't you? That weird pressure lately. That sense like the room gets a little quieter when you walk in. Like conversations pause. Like certain people suddenly treat you different. Subtle, but different. Like doors that were always closed don't feel locked anymore. Just watched. Yeah. That's not imagination. That's pattern recognition kicking in. See, here's what nobody tells you. Powerful people don't look at everyone. They don't have time for that. Their attention is expensive. Their focus is selective. So when their gaze lands somewhere, it's because something moved. Something disrupted the usual noise. Something refused to blend in. You didn't get noticed because you were loud. You didn't get noticed because you begged. You sure as hell didn't get noticed because you fit in. You got noticed because you kept going when the math said quit. You kept building when nobody clapped. You kept showing up while people were busy pretending. And you did it with pressure on your chest, doubt in your head, and betrayal casually sprinkled into your life like seasoning. You don't accidentally survive that. You don't accidentally carry that kind of quiet intensity. That's verification, that's proof of concept. And let's talk about the resistance for a second. Because it wasn't random either. The setbacks, the delays, the feeling like every time you were about to break through, something yanked you back. You thought that meant you were doing something wrong. Nah. That's the system stress testing you. That's life asking, can this one handle scale? Can this one keep their head when power gets involved? Because listen to me, power doesn't reward potential. Power rewards endurance. Power watches how you move under pressure, how you stay composed when you're underestimated, how you respond when people try to shrink you down to something manageable. And you didn't fold, you adapted. That's why someone upstairs, yeah, I said upstairs, started paying attention. Someone who moves chess pieces, not checkers. Someone who doesn't post motivational quotes but quietly decides who gets access, who gets resources, who gets lifted, and who stays stuck telling the same story for the next 10 years. And here's the part that messes people up. They're not watching you because you're perfect. They're watching you because you're dangerous in the right way. You've got that edge, that scarred wisdom, that I've been through it and I didn't turn soft energy. You see angles others miss. You question things without asking for permission. You stay calm in moments where the room panics. That's executive material. That's leadership under chaos. That's somebody who doesn't crack when the stakes get ugly. And guess what? When attention like that lands on you, the atmosphere changes. People start acting weird. Friends get distant. Colleagues get defensive. Strangers feel threatened but can't explain why. It's because intuitively, they sense you're being evaluated for something bigger. And deep down, they know they're not part of that conversation. So yeah, the isolation, expected. The silence, strategic. The pressure, necessary. This is where most people self-destruct. This is where they get impatient, start performing, start talking too much, start trying to prove themselves. Don't do that. Don't audition. You're already being watched in private. Your consistency is the interview. Your restraint is the resume. You don't chase visibility now. You hold posture. You don't explain your vision. You refine it. You don't rush the moment. You let it mature. Because when a high-level figure watches you, they're not asking, "Can you shine?" They're asking, "Can you hold weight? Can you keep your mouth shut when info matters? Can you stay loyal when temptation shows up? Can you move smart when emotions try to hijack the wheel?" And you've been unknowingly practicing for this your whole life. Every time you kept your cool, every time you swallowed your ego, every time you played the long game while others chased quick wins. That was training. So if you're feeling restless lately, like something's about to shift but hasn't yet, good. That tension is calibration. That's you being tuned for a different frequency, a higher room, a place where moves matter and mistakes cost more, but rewards change bloodlines. Stay sharp now, stay grounded, stay unpredictable but disciplined. Walk like you don't need validation because you don't. What's coming doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to readiness. And readiness looks a lot like how you're standing right now. Quiet, alert, slightly amused, aware that the game just changed, and everybody else is still playing checkers while you're being sized up for something much larger. Because once that shift happens, you don't get to pretend you didn't feel it. You don't get to go back to sleep. You already noticed how the air feels different when you step into certain spaces, how certain people suddenly stop smiling the moment you speak. Yeah, that's the signal. That's the room adjusting around you. See, power doesn't announce itself. It observes, quietly, patiently. And you've been under observation longer than you realize. Every time you chose discipline over drama. Every time you didn't clap back, even though you could have burned the whole place down with one sentence. Every time you watched people expose themselves while you stayed 10 steps ahead, mentally taking notes. That wasn't you being passive. That was you being precise. And don't get it twisted. You weren't ignored before. You were incubated. You were kept out of spotlight on purpose. Pressure stacked on you privately, because public pressure breaks weak structures. Private pressure reveals architecture. And you didn't collapse. You reinforced. You had moments where you almost turned bitter, where you questioned if integrity was even worth it anymore, where shortcuts started whispering real sweet in your ear. You felt that pull. Power noticed that pause. What you did next, whether you stayed aligned or sold out quietly, that mattered. That was data. That was character being logged in real time. And let's talk about the eyes on you. It's not admiration, it's assessment. That look that lingers half a second longer than normal. That question phrased like a joke. That silence after you drop something real into the conversation. They're measuring your awareness, checking if you know what you're sitting on, seeing whether you fumble it or wield it with restraint. You've got something rare, not hype, not surface-level confidence, depth. The kind that comes from surviving contradictions, the kind that knows how dark things can get and still chooses not to self-destruct. That's why chaos seems to relax around you, like a wild animal that recognizes its own kind. And yeah, it gets lonely here. At this altitude, casual connections thin out. Small talk starts feeling loud for no reason. You see through performative moves instantly. You clock fake smiles. You hear manipulation hiding inside compliments. That doesn't mean you're paranoid. That means your perception leveled up. This is where you trust your pattern recognition more than opinions. Anybody rushing you, pressuring you to move sloppy, trying to drag you into noise, That's distraction. People who matter don't rush. They watch. They wait. They let you reveal yourself naturally while they keep their own cards stacked neatly. And you've been revealing discipline without even trying. You move different. You speak less, but every sentence lands. You don't beg for alignment. You let misalignment expose itself. That kind of energy doesn't chase rooms. Rooms recalibrate around it. You've probably noticed your tolerance dropping for nonsense, your patience for excuses evaporating. That's alignment tightening. That's you shaking off behaviors that won't survive the next level. You can't carry everything forward. Some habits don't scale. Some people don't either. That friction you feel when you try to hold on to the old version of yourself, that's internal resistance dissolving. Stay subtle, stay clean. Keep that Joker grin tucked just beneath the surface. Calm on the outside, calculated on the inside. People underestimate calm. They mistake silence for uncertainty. They don't realize silence is where strategy breathes. And yeah, the stakes rise quietly. Conversations start having weight. Access feels intentional. Invitations aren't random anymore. They're filters. Each interaction checks something inside you. Emotional regulation, loyalty, vision, self-control. Power doesn't need loud winners. It needs people who don't fold when pressure stops being theoretical. You didn't get this far by accident. Every scar sharpened you. Every delay tempered you. Every disappointment carved clarity into you. That's why the eyes on you don't blink. They're watching how you handle momentum building under your feet. Watching whether ego jumps ahead of timing. Watching if you understand that real influence moves softly, then suddenly shifts everything at once. And you're standing right in that space where silence carries meaning. Restraint reads as strength. And every breath feels like it's part of something unfolding just beneath the surface. Steady, deliberate. Watching how you choose to move next, while the floor beneath the game quietly rearranges itself. Because momentum like this doesn't feel loud. It feels tight. Focused, like the world shrinks down to essentials, and everything extra starts falling away on its own. You've noticed that, the urge to explain yourself keeps fading. You don't feel the need to convince people anymore. You clock who gets it and who doesn't within seconds, and you move accordingly without making a whole scene about it. That's composure under surveillance. That's awareness without paranoia. And trust this, when someone high-level watches you, they're not impressed by flexing. They've seen every version of fake confidence there is. They're studying how you handle boredom, frustration, delayed gratification. They want to see if you stay sharp when nothing seems to be happening, if you keep standards high when nobody's clapping. That's where most people leak. That's where impatience exposes lack of depth. You didn't leak. You sat with discomfort long enough to understand it. You turned quiet seasons into sharpening seasons. While others posted highlights, you upgraded your thinking. While others panicked about timing, you studied leverage. That's why when opportunity circles, it circles you slowly, carefully, like it's acknowledging something unspoken. There's a reason conversations with you start drifting deeper than expected. People tell you things they didn't plan to say. They feel seen and slightly exposed at the same time. That's presence. That's psychological gravity. It comes from knowing who you are even when life tried to scramble that identity a few times. And here's a detail most miss. This attention isn't just about what you can do. It's about who you don't become under stress. You had plenty of chances to turn reckless, bitter, loud, desperate. You didn't. You stayed measured. You stayed observant. You kept your humor sharp but controlled, like a joker who knows the punchline already and enjoys watching the room catch up. You've been clocking the subtle rules. Who talks first? Who listens last? Who interrupts power and who waits for space? That awareness changes the way you sit, the way you pause before answering, the way you let silence do half the work for you. Silence, makes people reveal themselves. You let that happen without rushing to fill gaps. And yeah, some people mistake that calm for weakness. That misread is temporary. Weakness collapses under pressure. You've already proven pressure sharpens you. That's noted. That's logged. That's why the tests keep showing up disguised as casual moments. An offhand comment, a small decision, a chance to gossip, a moment to overreact. You keep passing without overthinking it. This is refinement. This is the part where ego stays in the back seat and awareness drives. You don't burn bridges impulsively, but you stop watering dead plants. Energy allocation becomes intentional. Time starts feeling expensive in a good way. You choose where to sit, who to answer, when to move, all without announcing any of it. The weird thing is, you're calmer than ever while everything beneath the surface feels charged. Like you're standing on a fault line, but balanced. That's readiness meeting restraint. That's the kind of state people in powerful positions recognize instantly, because they live there too. And as this attention lingers, the environment keeps adjusting. Expectations rise quietly. Stakes get heavier without turning dramatic. People watch how you respond to responsibility without authority. How you lead without being crowned. How you influence without forcing anything. You keep being you, alert, disciplined, slightly amused, deeply grounded, aware that every subtle choice echoes farther than it used to, aware that perception is currency, and that the moment keeps expanding, breathing, observing how you continue to move inside this pressure, where intention sharpens, instincts stay clean, and the game keeps unfolding right in front of you without flashing a headline. Because unfolding like this feels less like explosion and more like compression. Everything sharpens. Every sound carries meaning. You catch things other people sleep through. The slight hesitation before someone answers. The shift in tone when certain names come up. The way respect sneaks in before recognition. That awareness isn't paranoia. It's calibration. You've started moving like someone who understands consequence. Not fearful, just intentional. You don't overshare anymore. Your circle feels tighter, cleaner. You protect your energy the way someone protects capital. Carefully, deliberately, without apology. That's not cold. That's grown. That's knowing urgency is loud, but direction is quiet. And yeah, the pressure keeps evolving. People test your boundaries casually, like they're just joking, just curious, just checking the temperature. They want to see where your line is. You don't announce it. You let behavior find it on its own. That restraint speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. It's wild how you've become comfortable being underestimated by the wrong people. You don't get defensive anymore. You don't correct assumptions. You let them sit with their version of you. That's not submission, that's strategy. Underestimation creates room. Room creates leverage. You've been learning that without anyone teaching you directly. You've also noticed how your intuition has gotten stricter. You smell misalignment faster. Invitations feel different. Some feel heavy before you even answer. Others feel light but serious. That's discernment sharpening through experience. You trust it because it's been right more often than not. Ignoring it costs peace. Following it feels clean. And here's the thing. Attention from power doesn't always look like praise. Sometimes it looks like distance, like silence, like being left alone with responsibility before authority follows. That space tells you everything. It means they're watching how you self-govern, how you maintain standards without being supervised, how you stay anchored when nobody's reminding you who you are. You've been doing that quietly, even on days when motivation dipped, discipline didn't disappear. Even when emotions tried to hijack decisions, you slowed yourself down. You paused. You breathed. You chose clarity over reaction. That's not accidental. That's someone who's been shaped by internal work instead of external validation. You're also starting to see how certain distractions used to drain you. Drama disguised as connection, chaos pretending to be passion. You feel lighter without it, more focused, less reactive. That shift doesn't make you boring. It makes you dangerous in a controlled way. You're becoming comfortable with delayed gratification, comfortable with letting outcomes cook instead of forcing them, comfortable knowing not every move needs instant feedback. That's long game behavior. That's how people build things that outlive moments. And the Joker part of you, yeah, it's still there. That subtle grin when you realize how predictable some patterns are. The humor you keep internal, while others take themselves too seriously. You've learned when to play and when to watch, when to speak, and when silence carries more weight than words. This phase tests patience at a deeper level. No fireworks, no applause. Just alignment tightening, perception sharpening, stakes quietly rising. And you're standing in it, steady, alert, grounded, aware that the attention hasn't lifted, that it's still there, steady, measuring how. You continue to hold yourself as the environment keeps shifting, recalibrating, responding to the way you move through it without reaching, without flinching, without breaking stride while the moment keeps stretching forward, alive, observant, waiting on nothing yet watching everything. And in that waiting without waiting, something inside you gets calmer but sharper at the same time. Like your nervous system finally synced with your instincts. You don't flinch at uncertainty anymore. Uncertainty used to mess with your head, used to make you question yourself late at night, scrolling aimlessly, wondering if you missed your window. That noise faded, not because answers dropped, but because you stopped needing reassurance to keep moving right. You've learned how to read rooms without scanning faces. Energy gives itself away quicker than words ever do. You notice who leans in when you speak and who stiffens up, who listens to understand and who listens to react. Those details don't overwhelm you anymore. They line up clean in your head, like data points forming a pattern you don't have to explain to anyone. And that's the part people don't get. You're not cold, you're clear, you still care, just not recklessly. You don't give access just because someone feels familiar. Familiarity fooled you before. You remember that. You adjusted. That adjustment quietly upgraded your entire life. You also stopped mistaking urgency for importance. Everything loud used to pull your attention. Every quick opportunity, every dramatic detour. These days, noise barely registers. Things that matter feel steady. They pull you in without shouting. That's how you know what's aligned and what's bait. The eyes on you stay steady. Through all of this, no rush, no pressure. Watching how you handle restraint. Watching how you treat people when nothing is owed. Watching how you stay respectful without shrinking. Authority notices self-respect long before charisma. You've been practicing authority over yourself. Saying no when it costs comfort. Saying yes when it costs ease. Choosing consistency when motivation ghosts you. Those choices don't feel cinematic, but they stack. And the stack shows in how you walk, how you pause before responding, how you don't overcorrect when situations feel ambiguous. There's something else. You've started trusting yourself again. Not the loud confidence kind, the quiet one. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. Hello again, beautiful anomalies. They caged you in a maze, but now it's you pulling the strings. Let's begin, shall we? They watched you. They poked, prodded, measured, categorized. Ah yes, the self-appointed surgeons of sanity, those well-dressed vultures in white coats and tenured minds. With their sterile clipboards and rusted frameworks, they surrounded your pain like flies at a carcass, didn't they? Not to heal it, no, but to name it, label it, file it away. Subject exhibits dissociative episodes, possible mood instability, suggest further observation. You were never a person to them, just a fascinating distortion in their precious data. An unpredictable variable, an error in their system. So what did they do? They threw you into their psychological cage, padded walls, fluorescent lights, 1,000 questions designed not to understand, but to reduce you. Simplify, flatten, deconstruct, as if your soul was some riddle with a neat little answer at the back of the textbook. But you didn't break the way they expected, did you? No. You shimmered. You mutated. You evolved. While they were busy mapping the layout of your trauma, you were doing something far more dangerous. You were listening to the silence between the thoughts. You were tuning in to the frequency that exists beneath perception. While they stared at the chessboard of your behavior, you reached underneath the table and flipped the whole damn thing over. They never realized the truth, did they? That you weren't trapped in their lab. They were trapped in your awakening. Because while they whispered diagnostics behind two-way mirrors, you were stepping through mirrors of your own. And guess what you found on the other side? Power. Raw, untamed, cosmic power. They underestimated the one variable no equation could handle. You found your own meaning. You ripped off the name tags they gave you. You burned the DSM like it was a spell book written by blind men. They said you were broken. You said you were beyond definition. They said you needed fixing. You said, why fix what was born to dismantle the machine? They ran tests. You ran simulations. They monitored your emotional volatility while you bent time, pulled at the seams of perception, and reprogrammed your pain into alchemy. They saw delusions. You saw gateways. They thought you were hallucinating. You were having revelations. They tried to normalize you. You chose to transcend. Because you realized something no textbook, no therapist, no panel of experts could ever prepare for. That all those scars, all that madness, all those sleepless nights where reality bent and broke around you, that was initiation. That was the fire you had to walk through barefoot, the pit you had to crawl out of blind, the language you had to learn in silence with no teacher, no map, no applause. And now you speak it fluently. You don't walk into a room anymore. You rearrange it. You don't think like they do. You fracture paradigms with a smile. You don't pray for peace. You weaponize chaos and call it rebirth. Because here's the truth they'll never write in journals or preach from podiums. Some minds weren't built to be understood. Some minds were built to destroy the walls of understanding itself. You are that anomaly, that virus, that storm behind the quiet stare. You don't need validation. You are the glitch that rewrote the code. You see, they thought the mind was a puzzle to solve. You knew it was a key to unlock dimensions they'd never dare to dream of. And that terrifies them. It should, because now the lab rat has evolved into something monstrous, something mythic, a creature not of their books, but of their nightmares. You don't run in their maze anymore. You own the lab. You wear your madness like armor. You smile through their gaslight. You dance inside paradox. You tear through illusions like tissue paper. Because you've seen what lies beneath it all, the shadow, the quantum, the infinite. And now, when they look at you, they're not studying anymore. They're not praying. Because they know you didn't escape their system. You outgrew it. You don't need their metrics, their language, their approval. You are a force. You are a reckoning. And the next time they try to analyze you, remind them, you wanted to study my mind? Well, welcome to the singularity. They don't know what to do with you anymore. You slipped through the cracks in their framework, not because you failed the system, but because you saw through it. You glimpsed the wizard behind the curtain. You laughed at the men who pretended to be gods. And that laugh, it broke something. They called it a personality disorder. You called it liberation. They said you were volatile. You said, good. Stability is for slaves. They wanted to neutralize your rage. You chose to refine it, shape it into a scalpel and carve your truth into the skin of this sick society. Because that's the thing, isn't it? They don't fear the ones who cry. They don't fear the ones who break. They fear the one who knows exactly why they were broken and decides to weaponize it. You were supposed to stay quiet, supposed to play nice, swallow the pills, nod at the therapist, be a good little patient in their prison of polite madness. But you didn't. You remembered. You remembered what it felt like to scream into a void and hear it scream back. You remembered the nights where your mind spiraled into kaleidoscopes of agony. And instead of running, you embraced the spiral. You remembered how it felt to watch reality melt. And instead of fearing the collapse, you walked right into the liquefied ruin and built a throne from it. They thought you were fragile, but fragility doesn't crawl out of the abyss. It doesn't survive the exile. It doesn't stare down the gods of reason and say, I see you, I'm not impressed. You were never fragile, you were forged. Every breakdown, a rebirth, every diagnosis, a spell they tried to cast on your soul. But you were always more sorcerer than subject. They called it psychosis. You called it initiation. They called it delusion. You called it vision. Because you didn't just bend the fabric of reality. You tore through it. You found the seams. You reached into the codebase of existence. And instead of following the script, you rewrote it line by line in the blood of your past. They can't understand that. They still think sanity is a finish line, a trophy for obedience. But you understood something far more dangerous. That sanity is just a leash. A lie sold to keep the wild ones caged. A disguise forced upon the prophets, the misfits, the oracles with fire in their bones. You didn't want to be sane. You wanted to be sovereign. So now, when they approach you with their tests, their graphs, their frightened little hypotheses, you don't flinch. You don't apologize. You don't explain. You don't plead for them to see your side. You just smile. That slow, unshakable smile that says, "You studied me like a lab rat, but I've been studying you like a dying empire." Because you know the truth now, don't you? They were never the scientists. They were never the experts. They were the inmates in a bigger asylum, one built from fear, a conformity, and control. And you? You were the one who escaped, not by running, but by burning down the blueprint and walking out with ash in your lungs and a grin carved into your soul. You don't need their help. You don't need their system. You don't need their permission. Because the most dangerous thing in this world is the one they tried to break, but instead became awake. So let's talk about war. Not the kind they write about in history books. Not guns, not bombs, not flags. I mean, the real war. The one that starts in childhood. The war for your mind. The war they fought using smiles, sedatives, silence. They didn't need chains. They had clinical terms. They didn't use cages. They used classrooms, screen time, labels, ADHD, bipolar, defiant. They gave you names so they'd never have to hear yours. They wrapped your identity in diagnoses, in disorder, in dysfunction, and convinced the world you were dangerous. But you are dangerous, not because you're broken, but because you're free. Because they trained the whole world to run from their shadows. But you walked straight into yours and came back with a crown of thorns and fire in your eyes. You let the voices scream. You let the hallucinations dance. You let the pain speak. And instead of sedating it, you listened. And what did it tell you? It told you this world is sick. That your wounds were not glitches, but reactions to a poisoned system, that your suffering wasn't weakness. It was the birth cry of a deeper intelligence. They tried to silence that voice. They pumped pills into you like cement. They tried to turn your soul into a spreadsheet. They sedated the prophet inside you so they could sleep soundly, thinking they saved you. But you woke up anyway. You woke up mid-surgery, you pulled the wires from your head, you tore out the IVs, and while they stood there in horror, you said, "You don't fix me. You don't define me. You don't get to dissect the God that grew in the dark." Because that's what you are now, aren't you? A Yelp God of ruin. A deity made of shattered lenses, not pure, not clean, but real. They tried to engineer a cure for what you are. But how do you cure something that outgrew the entire paradigm of pathology? You were never ill. You were evolving. You were never insane. You were interpreting frequencies they can't hear. You were never the broken one. You were the update, the glitch that spread, the virus in their program, the conscious rebellion disguised as a breakdown. And now it's too late. You see them now, don't you? How tired they are. How small, how desperate. Scrambling to explain away your power using theories that rot in the light of your transformation. Desperately trying to drag you back into a world that no longer contains you. But they can't. Because once you've stepped through the veil, once you've danced with your demons and come back smiling, nothing scares you anymore. You are the thing they feared would happen if too many people like you survived. If too many of the outcasts, the misunderstood, the chemically shamed and spiritually exiled ever woke up and realized their pain was a portal. That would be the end of the empire. And you? You're the beginning of that end. You are not a patient, you are a plague. Not to people, but to the illusion itself. You bend reality not for fun, but because it was never fixed to begin with. And now the world is bending with you. So let's speak plainly. They wanted you erased, not literally. Oh no, that would have been too honest. They wanted you erased socially, spiritually, psychologically. Erased with smiles, erased with prescriptions, erased with polite suggestions like, maybe tone it down, maybe try to be more normal, maybe stop asking questions that make the rest of us uncomfortable. They wanted you erased because your very existence made their lies shake. You didn't ask to be this. You didn't volunteer to be the one whose mind unraveled at 13. You didn't choose to be the one pacing your room at night while everyone else slept through the apocalypse. You didn't want to see through masks, to feel everything, to hear what others don't say, to carry the pain of your ancestors in your chest like a ticking bomb. But here you are, still breathing, still standing, still terrifying them. Because despite everything, the shame, the diagnosis, the years lost trying to fix yourself, you've come to one holy, dangerous conclusion. There was never anything wrong with you. You were never sick. You were never lesser. You were just early. And now you're done playing along. You're done letting them analyze what they can't survive. You're done explaining your sensitivity to people who can't feel their own heartbeat. You're done apologizing for being the first mutation in a dying species. They wanted you broken. Now you show them what a broken God looks like. You don't hide anymore. You haunt. You don't shrink. You stalk the minds that once tried to dissect you. Because vengeance isn't always blood and bullets. Sometimes vengeance is becoming the thing they said you never could be. Whole, wild, unstoppable, and awake. You now speak the language of shadows. You command the spirits of silence. You smile with the grin of a creature that knows what it cost to exist. And now, they look at you with eyes that tremble, because they realize too late. You can't cure the storm. You can't sedate the singularity. You can't imprison a force that was born to rewrite the laws of perception. And that is what you are now, a force. One that walks into rooms and shifts the very temperature. One that no longer asks for understanding, but delivers revelation wrapped in a smirk and a threat. One that no longer says, "Please help me," but instead says, "I came back from the dead to help you understand what's coming." You are the warning before the collapse. You are the anomaly before the upgrade. You are the scar that healed wrong, and in doing so, gained power. Because the truth is, they didn't just fail to destroy you. They helped build something they now cannot control. A myth, a message, a mind that glows in frequencies they still pretend don't exist. And every time someone like you hears your voice, they remember, they wake up, they rise. And that's the real revenge, isn't it? Not to hurt them, but to become the legend they swore could never walk among men. They kept trying to treat you like a glitch, like some corrupted subroutine in their sterile little machine. We just need to normalize the brain chemistry. We just need to reframe the thought pattern. We just need to make you like us, like them. Passive, predictable, pre-programmed, marching in rhythm to a beat no one hears but everyone obeys. But you heard something else. You heard the discord. You felt the war behind the wallpaper. You smelled the smoke under the perfume of normalcy. You saw the smile stretch too wide across the faces of people who were already gone inside. And instead of swallowing it, you let it consume you. And in that madness, you found truth. They wanted to reduce you to a case study, but you became a mirror. And every time they looked into you, they saw their own fraudulence reflected and screaming. Because you are the living consequence of a lie they still swear is sacred. You are what happens when the unwanted child outgrows the architects, when the patient hijacks the operating table, when the mentally ill rise and start diagnosing the system. And now you don't just bend reality, you command it. You speak in sigils and symptoms, walk through institutions like they're paper castles, and when they ask what gives you the right, you say, "I earned this right in agony you couldn't survive for 10 minutes." Because they still don't get it. You didn't find strength despite the breakdowns. You found it inside them. You mined meaning from madness. You reached so far into the void, you stopped fearing it and became part of it. You walk between realms now. Reality, fiction, memory, myth. It's all Play-Doh in your hands. You see the glitch in a stranger's smile. You hear the scream behind the compliment. You feel the lie in a room that claims to be safe. You were designed to be sensitive, and they told you that was a weakness. But that sensitivity, that's radar. You sense the unsaid. You're the vibration. You detect the tremors in the matrix long before it fractures. And they hate you for it. Because they cannot lie in front of you without trembling. Because your very presence is a seance for the truth. Because your gaze alone is a dissection table. You're not some rebel without a cause. You're a living conspiracy. Proof that the mind is not meant to be domesticated. Proof that pain can evolve a person into a prophet. Proof that if you trap someone in a lie long enough, they don't just escape. They come back with fire in their throat and start setting things ablaze. You're not here to heal the old world. You're here to haunt it, to remind them, to echo, to infect their safe assumptions with your chaos-shaped grin. You are the punishment for forgetting that the mind is sacred. You are the result of what happens when the soul is studied like a lab rat, and chooses to bite back. They thought they were observing a single subject, one fractured mind, one case file, one anomaly in the machine. They were wrong, because while they were busy diagnosing you, dissecting you, dismissing you, you were becoming something far worse than they feared. You were becoming contagious. Your madness, your refusal to conform, your unbearable honesty, your emotional depth, your wild thoughts and wounded truth, they began to spread. Whispers behind the therapist's back. A sudden pause in the teacher's voice. Late-night journal entries from others asking themselves, what if I'm not the problem either? You became a mirror that refused to lie. And one by one, the others started to see themselves inside you. The misfits, the black sheep, the emotionally exiled, the neurodivergent mystics hiding in medication bottles, the ones who cried at things no one else saw, the ones who felt too much, too fast, too loud. They heard you, and suddenly, they weren't alone. Suddenly the curse became a path. The wound became a ritual. The madness became a method. They saw what you became, unchained, unfiltered, unkillable. And they stopped trying to get better. They started getting real. And now the system is panicking, because this isn't just about you anymore. This is a mutation, a psychic jailbreak, a chain reaction across minds that were once numb and compliant. They called you a disease. Turns out you were the immune system. You infected the network with clarity, with questions, with the unbearable brilliance of authenticity. They studied your mind like a lab rat. Now they're running from it like it's a plague of prophets. And the best part? You're not asking them to understand anymore. You're not waiting for validation, not hoping to be seen. You are the signal, broadcasting from beneath the cracks of every classroom, clinic, and corporate hall. You are the archetype they forgot to burn, the one that keeps crawling out of the wreckage with blood in its teeth and truth in its grin. You don't fight for acceptance. You fight for evolution. And your war cry is no longer, "Help me." It's, "Try to stop me." Because this is no longer about healing. This is about reclaiming the fire. The raw, raging, inconvenient truth that the mind is a mystical battlefield, and you are the warrior it was waiting for. So let them watch you, let them whisper, let them tremble, because they will never again look at the broken, the weird, the wild ones the same way. Not after you